What if the entire Jedi Council went to Kashyyyk? What would happen then? We pick up with Ki-Adi-Mundi bringing up the droid attack on the Wookiees. Let's begin. The chamber of the Jedi Council maintained its perfect temperature, despite Coruscant's midday heat, an artificial oasis of calm, while systems across the galaxy burned with conflict. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi's holographic form materialized in his assigned chair, transmitting from Maigito where he paused mid-conversation to close the Durasteel viewport shields behind him, muffling sounds of blaster fire and the dying screams of clone troopers as he busied himself with matters more worthy of his time and energy. "What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?" Mundi inquired, his delivery suggesting the question was more tactical than compassionate. The atmosphere congealed with unspoken recognition. Glances circulated among the assembled masters, carrying currents of calculation rather than surprise. Mace Windu closed his eyes momentarily, allowing himself a microsecond of visible frustration before his fingers interlaced in his lap, his features reassembled into their customary vigilance. "If anyone discovers what we're actually doing on Kashyyyk," Windu said, his gaze fixed forward while his words traveled purposefully toward Yoda's form seated next to him, "the Separatists won't be our biggest problem." Mace didn't spell out the details. They all knew. In following the will of the Force, obstacles occasionally presented themselves, and in the case of their operation on Kashyyyk, the obstacle standing in the way of the light was Republic law enforcement, specifically the Narcotics Division. Ki-Adi-Mundi turned toward the Grand Master. "You must go, Master Yoda. If the droids locate anything and broadcast it to the galaxy..." He left the implication hanging like a poorly concealed contraband shipment. Yoda glared at Mundi. "Why must I go, Not the only one benefiting from Kashyyyk, I am. When profits arrive, shares everyone wants. When problems arise, Yoda must go." "You're the only one who can properly handle those animals," Windu countered. Yoda's eyes moved to Windu. "Need to handle the Wookiees, we do not. Only the droids need handling. That, any of you can do." What followed was a 20-minute back and forth by the Council Masters on why the Light had tasks for them which could not be forfeited for Kashyyyk. Master Plo Koon invoked the 7th harmonic principle of the ancient wills, while Master Shakti claimed her astral resonance was currently misaligned with woodland environments. The metaphysical excuses continued as the assembled masters engaged in a masterful display of responsibility avoidance, each nominating another in an elegant dance of diplomatic redirection that accomplished precisely nothing. This circular volley of recommendations might have continued indefinitely had not Obi-Wan Kenobi, desperate to avoid being selected himself, gestured toward his former Padawan. "Perhaps Anakin would be better suited," Obi-Wan offered with diplomatic smoothness. "His direct approach would prove effective against the droids." Anakin Skywalker, already uncomfortable at being volunteered, opened his mouth to protest. "I can't leave Coruscant. I've had a disturbing vision and need to find a way to prevent it." Windu's brow furrowed. "What vision, Skywalker?" Yoda waved dismissively. "Saw someone suffering and dying, he did. Advised him to let go and not care about it. I did." The council exchanged concerned glances that carried dual irritation, both at Yoda's characteristically dismissive counsel and at Anakin for seeking guidance from what amounted to a 900-year-old mentally deteriorating tree creature, rather than consulting any of them. However, if Anakin had foreseen one of their deaths during wartime, personal grievances about advisory protocols would have to wait. A few of the masters began asking if it was them, their voices overlapping in nervous concern. Yoda stepped in before more masters could volunteer themselves as potential victims. "Someone very close to young Skywalker it is." Before Obi-Wan could ask if it was him or Ahsoka, Ki-Adi-Mundi jumped in with apparent concern. "Ah, is it Amidala, your one wife?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral despite the subtle emphasis on one, a barely concealed opportunity to reference his own superior marital accomplishments. "Yes," Anakin admitted, his shoulders sagging. The revelation drew no gasps of shock. The council had long since stopped pretending ignorance about Anakin's marriage. "I need to find a way to stop her death," Anakin insisted again, perhaps a little louder this time, as if volume equated to validity. "What exactly did you see?" Shakti asked gently. "How does she die?" Anakin hesitated. The vision, so vivid and terrifying in the solitude of his mind, felt suddenly ill-defined under the collective, analytical gaze of the council. "I saw her in pain, screaming. It was terrible. I don't know what to do." "Okay, but how exactly did she die?" Anakin, Master T pressed, her gentleness underpinned by a Jedi's need for precision. "We can't help without the details. Was she struck down? Was there an accident?" Anakin replayed the images. Pain, yes. Screaming, definitely. But death? Now that he was forced to articulate it, A crucial piece of the vision seemed to be missing. "Well," he began, his voice losing some of its earlier certainty, "I didn't actually see her die, not explicitly, just her in great pain. That must mean she was close to death." A flicker of doubt, small but insistent, began to form in his mind. The council contemplated this. Mace Windu leaned forward, his expression intense. "Any idea why she was screaming, Skywalker? Did you notice explosions? Blaster fire? Assassins? Anything of that nature?" "Perhaps there will be some form of attack on the Senate," Mundi suggested. "There was nothing like that," Anakin said, his gaze dropping to the floor. "She was just in pain and suffering." His voice was smaller now, his own confusion beginning to surface. "Yes, but why, Anakin?" Mace asked. "What caused this great pain? You must have seen something." Anakin hesitated. "Well, she was in..." He paused, the pieces of the vision reassembling in his mind under their scrutiny. "She was in childbirth." A profound silence descended upon the chamber, thick and heavy as a Hutt's blanket. Finally, Mace Windu spoke, each word delivered slowly. "So you saw a woman in pain during childbirth. That's it?" Anakin glanced around at all the expectant faces staring at him. "Well, yes," he admitted reluctantly, recognizing that perhaps the Jedi text had been rather light on chapters concerning obstetrics. Laughter, when it came, was not a trickle but a deluge. It started with a snort from Plo Koon, quickly followed by a hearty chuckle from Ki-Adi-Mundi. Obi-Wan, despite his best efforts, let out a strangled gasp that quickly morphed into wheezing laughter, tears forming in his eyes. Even Mace Windu cracked a rare, wide smile before quickly trying to suppress it. Shakti covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Yoda, however, just shook his head, his large eyes blinking slowly, a sigh escaping his lips. "How embarrassing this is." "Anakin," Obi-Wan finally managed, wiping a tear from his eye as he tried to catch his breath. "Pain during childbirth is a known phenomenon. You..." He paused, gasping for air before blurting out, "You blithering idiot." "You simply witnessed childbirth, Skywalker," Mace said, his attempt at stern composure undermined by lingering amusement. "Stop inventing catastrophes where none exist." "So she's not going to die?" Anakin asked, hope and uncertainty warring in his voice. "Of course not," Mundi interjected smoothly. "All 4 of my wives endured identical experiences. Each delivery proceeded without incident." His tone carried that familiar note of superiority, yet another opportunity to showcase his matrimonial achievements over Anakin's single marriage. Mace's eyes turned toward Mundi's holographic form. 7 children, isn't it, Mundi? How many have you actually seen in the last decade? "The code forbids me from staying in their lives, Master," Mundi replied, instantly. Unfortunate it is that, except the Jedi Code, the child support codes do not. The will of the Force they disobey," Yoda muttered. Windu turned to Yoda. "And why didn't you ask Anakin for details about this vision, Master?" "Just awakened, I had," Yoda grumbled. "Think clearly I could not. Going to ask him for details later, I was." As the residual chuckles faded around the chamber, Anakin rose from his seat, his relief about Padme warring with the sting of embarrassment. The Council's amusement at his expense had run its course, but the original problem remained unsolved. "This is all very enlightening," Anakin said, his voice carrying both frustration and grudging gratitude. "But it doesn't address the real issue. I can't handle Kashyyyk alone. I've never even operated in that terrain. I cannot guarantee victory." Arguments resumed, threatening to consume the entire day. As voices overlapped in increasingly circular logic, Yoda's eyes drifted shut in what might have been meditation. Within seconds, his small form began swaying dangerously on his Geimer stick. The attempted centering transformed into obvious sleep. He nearly toppled completely before jerking awake with a snort. In that moment of clarity, such periods growing increasingly rare, the ancient master rose and positioned himself at the chamber's center. "Since profit from Kashyyyk we all do," Yoda announced. "Fix this together. We must." The risk hung unspoken in the air. Their entire operation, years in the making, teetered on the edge of exposure. "Go together, we will," Yoda continued. "Every council member, every battalion. With our combined strength, end this in days we can, not weeks. Afford to waste time arguing, we cannot." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, reluctant agreement mixing with logistical concerns. Even the council members transmitting from distant battlefields recognized where their true priorities lay. If systems fell to separatist control during their absence, well, clearly the Force willed it so. Who were they to question the cosmic wisdom? The Lunafarms and Rhino processing facilities on Kashyyyk represented the Force's true desire. "Then it's settled," Windu declared after the last objections faded. "We finish this together, and quickly." "Wait," Yoda interjected, his ears perking. "Young Skywalker's mission to spy on the Chancellor. Forgotten, have we?" Hope flickered across Anakin's features. He'd gladly spy on anyone if it meant avoiding Kashyyyk's arachnid-infested jungles. Kit Fisto's smile demolished that hope instantly. "We could simply plant a listening device in his office. Monitor him remotely," he said. "Besides, we shouldn't leave young Skywalker unsupervised on Coruscant. He might see Senator Amidala yawning and assume she's being force-choked." "All right, knock it off," Anakin muttered, as another ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. "Best solution this is," Yoda agreed once the amusement subsided, fixing Anakin with a pointed stare. "From Master Jocasta, surveillance equipment you will take. In the Chancellor's office, plant it quickly. Leave soon, we must." Anakin nodded, not that he had any choice. At least they'd resolved his fears about Padme, however mockingly. While the Council prepared for departure on what they'd designated Operation Nature Preserve, Anakin made his way to the executive building. Fortune smiled upon him. Palpatine was currently in the Senate Rotunda, delivering one of his legendary filibusters about taxation subsection amendments that had already induced sleep in half the assembly. The Chancellor's droning voice carried across the HoloNet feeds as he dissected subclauses with excruciating detail, buying Anakin ample time. R2-D2 circuits hummed as the droid sliced into security systems, creating looped footage to mask their infiltration. Within minutes, Anakin had secured the palm-sized transmitter inside a ventilation duct in Palpatine's office and vanished back into Coruscant's endless corridors, all while the Chancellor continued his soporific legislative marathon. Soon, every council member on Coruscant departed for Kashyyyk, while those scattered across the galaxy abandoned their posts to converge on the jungle world. Multiple systems fell to separatist forces in their absence. The Council deemed it acceptable losses. After all, the Force worked in mysterious ways, and those ways happened to align perfectly with protecting their agricultural investments. The Republic fleet emerged from hyperspace in formation. Multiple Venator-class cruisers carrying the combined Council forces into orbit around Kashyyyk. Gunships and transport shuttles descended through the atmosphere, ferrying troops to the surface. The descent craft cut through morning mist, approaching cleared zones near the eastern defensive line, where Wookiee-constructed platforms awaited. Luminara unduly stood at the primary landing zone, her robes somehow pristine despite commanding the defense for several days. As the Council members disembarked with their clone battalions, she approached with her report. "The droid army is less than 20 standard hours from reaching our position, Masters. My forces have established preliminary defensive positions, but their numbers... Over soon, this will be," Yoda interrupted, surveying the streams of clone troopers filing across the platforms. "Overwhelming force we have brought. To the command center now. Speak to our chief agricultural coordinator. I must." The command center, a converted agricultural processing facility, overlooked just one of many valleys where the faithful toiled. Inside, Chewbacca stood before holographic displays, Tarful at his side. As the Council's leading expert on Luna cultivation and Rhydo refinement processes, Chewbacca had become indispensable to their operation.
"The droids approach from the eastern ridges,"
Chewbacca growled, his words translated through speakers.
"Their trajectory will bring them directly through Sector 7, the primary Luna cultivation zone."
The assembled masters studied the tactical display. "Standard flanking maneuver we employ," Yoda declared. "Pincer movement from north and south. But first..." He paused with visible reluctance. "Address the faithful. I must..." A collective sigh rippled through the room. Even Luminara, who'd been initiated into the operation's true nature years ago, couldn't hide her weariness at what came next. This performance had become routine, necessary, but exhausting. Below them, across the vast plantations, millions of Wookiees and imported Ewoks labored under a carefully crafted delusion. They believed they served Divine Force entities, that each Lunaplant tended and each batch of Rhydo processed brought them closer to eternal paradise. Yoda had woven this mythology through masterful application of Force techniques combined with strategic narcotic smoke during religious ceremonies. The workers required no payment, only the promise of heaven. The operation had grown so vast that only Chewbacca, Tarful, and a select group of Wookiee elders knew the truth. Even most clone commanders remained ignorant, believing they protected a nature preserve. "Prepare the translation systems," Yoda commanded with visible reluctance. Soon, speakers across the defensive positions crackled to life as Yoda stood before the assembly, his small form elevated on a platform. His words echoed through the valleys in Shirivok and Ewokese. "Warriors of the sacred groves, The Force itself speaks through me. Dark machines approach our divine gardens. Jealous beings who would deny you paradise fight with holy fury. Each droid destroyed brings you closer to eternal reward. Victory, the Force promises. Eternal paradise awaits the faithful. The response was deafening. Wookiees roared their devotion while Ewoks chittered war hymns, their religious fervor transforming them into an unstoppable force. Within hours, the combined forces stood ready. Wookiees clutching religious banners that rippled in the evening breeze, Ewoks chanting prayers, clone troopers checking their weapons one final time. In the command center, the council members had already settled into comfortable chairs. A celebration feast had been laid out, local delicacies mixed with imported luxuries. Within an hour, half the masters had collapsed into cushioned seats, the air thick with Luna smoke and Rhydo fumes. Luminara sipped her tea, one of the few maintaining any semblance of sobriety. The distant whine of droid landing craft grew louder. Through the windows, explosions began lighting the horizon as the battle commenced. The Wookiees and Ewoks fought with supernatural fury, each fallen warrior celebrated by their comrades as having achieved instant paradise. Meanwhile, in the increasingly hazy command center, Master Fisto, Yoda mumbled, struggling to focus through heavy eyelids. The council chamber. Locked it when we left, did you? Jump on the seats. The younglings will. Fisto's head rolled lazily against his chair. That wasn't my assignment, Master. Specifically told you I did. Last one out locks the chamber. Always the rule, this has been. You were the last one out, Fisto pointed out, his usual smile widening. I saw you go back for your meditation herbs. When last I checked, Yoda enunciated carefully, jabbing his gamer stick in Fisto's direction. Yoda, not Fisto, was Grand Master of the Order. When last I checked, Windu interjected from across the room, Yoda, not Fisto, was hiding sacks of spice under his council chair. As the argument devolved into increasingly petty accusations, Anakin groaned and activated the holoprojector. Coruscanti Club music filled the command center, drowning out both Yoda's incomprehensible grumbling and the sounds of droids being dismembered outside. Several semi-conscious masters began swaying to the beat. Yoda shot Anakin a withering glare before taking another deep inhale of Rhydo, the battle for Kashyyyk continuing without their supervision. On Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine paced his office, receiving reports of the Jedi Council's mysterious departure for Kashyyyk. All of them, he hissed to the empty chamber. Every last one of those idiots abandoned their posts for this nature preserve operation. His carefully orchestrated plans lay in ruins. The elimination of Grievous was now in jeopardy. Anakin, his carefully cultivated asset, had vanished with them. No trigger for Order 66. The timing, perfect until moments ago, now collapsed entirely. The frustration building within him demanded release. Palpatine engaged in what he considered therapeutic self-dialogue, a practice Plagueis had recommended after Palpatine had walked in on his master, talking to himself decades ago. Perfectly normal for Sith Lords, Plagueis had insisted. Bane's holocron specifically advises it for stress management. Soon, he whispered, his voice transforming into the raspy tone of Darth Sidious, the Jedi will all be dead. The Senate will be under Sith control. The galaxy will become my empire. He continued, detailing plans to manipulate holonet narratives, eliminate the clones once their usefulness ended, and reshape galactic civilization under his iron fist. His laughter echoed through the empty office, a momentary indulgence in what he believed was complete privacy. On Kashyyyk, the battle had largely concluded. The sounds of combat had faded to sporadic blaster fire and the occasional crash of metal. Through the command center's windows, they could see Wookiees taking turns, ceremonially dismembering the few remaining droids while Ewoks attempted to drag clone corpses away for consumption, only to be kicked aside by disgusted Wookiee warriors. A persistent beeping from his pocket roused Yoda from his stupor. He fumbled for his datapad but first checked his Rhydo pipe, empty. Scowling, he activated the datapad to find an urgent notification. The latest data packet from the bug in Palpatine's office had arrived. "Wake up, all of you," Yoda barked, prodding nearby masters with his gamer stick. "Important intelligence we have received." The council members stirred from various states of unconsciousness, gathering around as Yoda played the recording. Their intoxication sobered slightly as they listened to Palpatine's transformation into Sidious, his detailed plans for galactic domination, the destruction of the Jedi Order, and the formation of his empire. When the recording ended, silence filled the command center. Finally, Yoda spoke. "Found our tracker, Palpatine has. Saying things to see who attacks him, he is." The intoxicated council members struggled to process this theory. Yoda continued, his words slightly slurred. but determined. Clever bait, this is. Mentions destroying Jedi, he does. If attack him we do, know we placed the bug, he will. Mentions controlling Senate. If senators move against him, think they placed it, he will. Mentions media manipulation. If HoloNet investigates, think journalists planted it, he will. Each threat designed to flush out the tracker's owner it is. Respond to his bait, we must not. The assembled masters nodded slowly. In their altered state, this seemed like masterful deduction. Of course it was bait. Threaten multiple groups, see which one responds. No one could be foolish enough to genuinely monologue their evil plans to an empty room. I placed it inside a vent. It was secure. Anakin began defensively, then trailed off. The Rhino fumes were calling. Why was he even arguing? He slumped back into his chair, reaching for the nearest pipe. We should upload this to the HoloNet, Kit Fisto suggested suddenly. An anonymous upload routed through Coruscant proxies. Palpatine will be trapped. If he investigates our bug officially, he admits the audio leak is real. He'll have to dismiss it as fake, call it algorithm-generated audio. And with the proxies making it look like it came from the Senate district, he'll suspect his own inner circle. Not us. Perfect cover. This seemed like tactical genius to the other masters. Yoda immediately began the upload process, routing the recording through dozens of proxy servers to mask its origin. Within minutes, the audio would appear to have leaked from someone within the Senate district itself. The recording spread through the HoloNet like wildfire. Palpatine immediately denounced it as malicious fabrication and juvenile attempt at character assassination. Most senators accepted this explanation. The recording sounded too melodramatic and over the top to be authentic. The evil laugh in particular spawned countless HoloNet memes. Who actually laughs like that? Became the caption of choice as the audio clip spread through political holochat groups, edited into increasingly absurd contexts. Privately, Palpatine seethed, mentally noting each senator who had dared laugh at the recording. More pressing, however, was locating the surveillance device that had captured his monologue. Unable to trust anyone with such a sensitive matter, Palpatine decided to conduct the search himself. He retrieved his scanning device from his private collection and methodically swept the office. The scanner's insistent beeping led him to the ventilation duct, where he discovered the small transmitter wedged behind the grating. He crushed it beneath his heel with particular venom. Now to find who had placed it there, he moved to review the security footage, scrolling through hours of recordings. But the footage showed nothing, just continuous, uninterrupted views of an empty office. Too continuous, too perfect. Someone had clearly tampered with the system and done it well. Conventional investigation methods exhausted, Palpatine turned to more arcane solutions. Ancient Sith texts described a tracking ritual that could reveal anyone who had contacted an object. The ingredients were rare, but available within his chambers. Drawing the curtains and activating privacy protocols, Palpatine assembled a small cauldron in the center of his office. Various powders, liquids, and crystalline substances went into the mixture, heated by the cauldron's glowing base. The Force responded to his incantations, the mixture beginning to glow with unnatural light. "Show me," Palpatine whispered, dropping the damaged transmitter into the cauldron. The mixture bubbled violently. Images began forming in the vapor. Anakin Skywalker's face taking shape. The boy had betrayed him after all. Palpatine stood motionless, calculating the implications. The Jedi clearly suspected something. They could no longer be allowed to exist. Order 66 must be executed tonight. As for Skywalker, the Chosen One would be destroyed through the soul transfer ritual he'd been perfecting. Yes, he would have the clones take Anakin alive. The other Jedi would die, and he would possess Skywalker's body to become the Chosen One himself. But the Force, it seemed, had other plans. Lost in his calculations, Palpatine failed to notice the damaged rhydonium ion battery from the transmitter, its casing cracked from his heel. Rhydonium batteries, dirt cheap precisely because of their explosive instability, came standard in the budget surveillance equipment the Jedi Council had purchased to save credits for more essential expenses. The battery's contents met the heated mixture. The reaction was instantaneous. The Force screamed danger. Palpatine's head snapped toward the cauldron. The explosion obliterated everything within a 20-meter radius. By morning, headlines across Coruscant proclaimed, "Chancellor dies in apparent glitter stim manufacturing accident. Authorities investigate secret drug lab in executive office." Back on Kashyyyk, the Council Masters only discovered Palpatine's demise when the news spread across the HoloNet. They'd missed all the temple alerts, datapads silenced during their victory celebration over the droids. Someone finally noticed the breaking news coverage. "Glitter stim manufacturing," Shaak Ti snorted. The idiot couldn't even maintain proper lab discipline. "Basic safety protocols, ignored they must have been," Yoda added between puffs of his pipe. "Amateur work." Anakin shrugged, reaching for another drink. The man had been rather annoying, truth be told, and he currently had more pressing concerns, like whether the Luna smoke was making the ceiling spin, or if that was just him. In the aftermath, General Grievous found himself without direction. Lacking Palpatine's strategic guidance, he decided to seize control of the Separatist movement through direct action. Arriving at the Mustafar mining facility where the Separatist Council convened, he ordered an orbital bombardment that reduced the entire complex to molten slag. "General," his tactical droid informed him as they surveyed the destruction, "those individuals controlled all Separatist financial accounts. Without their authorization codes, we cannot access any funds." Grievous stood frozen. He'd just vaporized his entire payroll department. "The droid army will shut down within days, without payment for maintenance and power cells," the droid continued helpfully. Grievous turned to look at the lava flowing below. Without a word, he vaulted over the railing and plunged into the molten rock, becoming one with Mustafar's volcanic rivers. The Clone Wars had ended with a bookkeeping error. In the power vacuum that followed, Senator Padme Amidala and her coalition moved swiftly. Representative Jar Jar Binks, beloved by the masses and easily guided by advisors, emerged as their candidate for Chancellor. "Misa so honored to be serving the Republic," Chancellor Binks announced to thunderous applause. Behind him, Padme and her allies maintained carefully neutral expressions while controlling every aspect of his agenda. The new administration's first act was to formally designate Kashyyyk as a protected nature reserve, prohibiting all non-governmental access. Palpatine had been attempting to investigate the Jedi's operations there before his death. Now any such investigation became legally impossible. Soon after, Luke and Leia entered the galaxy to a living mother and a father, who shipped them off to Naboo. The Jedi Order continued to follow the will of the Force, their profits now secured by Republic law. And then they all lived happily ever after. The end.